Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva
Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva
Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Nitai Gora Hari Bo
Nitai Gora Hari Bo Hari Bo Nitai Gora Hari Bo
Jai Nam Sankirtana Ki Jai
Jai.
Prabhupada Ki
Jai.
Nantapati Vaishnava
Jai.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
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 Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Virati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuddha Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagratam Sagranatam Vitam Tam Sujivam Samritam Samadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagarana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamsha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Paramami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Virvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshakarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. Hare Krishna. So, we're discussing today the 17th verse of chapter 13. What is the title of the chapter?
Nature, the enjoyer, and consciousness.
Nature, enjoyer, and consciousness. So here, in this chapter, Krishna is speaking about 6 different terms that Arjuna has inquired about. He has asked about the body, the Kshetra. He has asked about the Kshetrajna, the knower of the bodies. And he has asked about knowledge. He has asked about the object of knowledge. He has asked about nature and the enjoyer. So these 6 things, they intertwine to answer one of the most important things in life, which is how to find happiness and peace, how to relish the nectar of life. Prabhupada has written in a previous purport. when one understands the soul, the super soul, and the nature, the prakriti that we've come within, one finds the ability to understand the nature, the perfection of life. Because one understands what is the soul's relationship with the material world, and what is the soul's relationship with the Supreme Lord. When we understand those two dynamics, then one can craft a very successful path to successful life. But without it, without knowing the relationship between the soul and the super soul, one is simply left to try to observe around oneself with their material senses, all of the material world, and simply left with the very frustrating experience of trying to enjoy matter. But we know our attempts to enjoy the material world are constantly being thwarted by setback after setback after setback. And we sometimes wonder, isn't there a better bargain? Well, yes, there is. And that brings us to understanding the spirit soul in relationship with the Supreme Lord. So Krishna in the last several verses has been distinguishing between the jiva and the super soul. So Krishna says they are both what? He says they both have something in common. Anybody remember what do they have in common?
Both spiritual.
They're both made up of spirit energy, yes. They're both the knowers of the body, right? Mm-hmm. So the jiva is the knower and the super soul. So are they the same?
No.
What is the relationship between jiva and super soul?
Jiva just knows maybe what's happening in this body, but the super soul knows what's happening in all bodies, all living entities.
All living entities, right? So one is a supreme knower, and one is a limited knower. Even our own body we have limited knowledge of. Do we know what's happening inside of our big toe right now? We have very limited knowledge. But the super soul has complete knowledge. So Krishna has been explaining that to drive home a very important point. The soul and the super soul are not one. They are two. But they are connected in relationship. And what is that relationship?
Servant, master.
They're friends. They're friends. The super soul is the ultimate loving friend of the jiva. The ultimate caretaker, maintainer, and provider. So actually there's a very sweet relationship between the soul and the super soul. But due to the soul's desire to try to enjoy independent of its friend, there is challenges and frustrations. Right? So let's read now the 17th verse, and we'll continue this discussion about soul and super soul. Okay.
Although the super soul appears to be divided amongst all beings, he is never divided. He is situated as one. Although he is the maintainer of every living entity, it is to be understood that he devours and develops all.
Purport?
The Lord is situated in everyone's heart as the super soul. Does this mean that he has become divided? No. Actually, he is one. The example is given of the sun. The sun at the meridian is situated in its place, but if one goes for 5,000 miles in all directions and asks, "Where's the sun?" everyone will say that is shining on his head. Yeah. In the Vedic literature, this example is given to show that although he is undivided, he is situated as if he's divided. Also, it is said in Vedic literature that one Vishnu is present everywhere by his omnipotence, just as the sun appears in many places to many persons. And the Supreme Lord, although the maintainer of every living entity, devours everything at the time of annihilation. This was confirmed in the 11th canto when the Lord said that he had come to devour all the warriors assembled at Kurukshetra. He also mentioned that he in the form of time. Yeah, he in the form of time. He also devours. He is the annihilator, the killer of all. When there is creation, he develops all their original state, and at the time of annihilation, he devours them. The Vedic hymn confirms that he is the origin of all living entities and the rest of all. After creation, everything rests in his omnipotence, and after annihilation, everything returns to rest in him. These are confirmed by the Vedic hymns.
So the verse again reads, although the supersoul appears to be divided among all beings, he is never divided. He is situated as one. Although he is a maintainer of every living entity, it should be understood that he devours and develops all. So we see another distinction between the supersoul and the jiva. And what is this distinction? What can the supersoul do that we cannot do?
We cannot be present in all living beings.
Cannot be present in all living beings, right? And yet be
One.
But yet be one. Sometimes we're so busy we feel like, oh, I wish I could be in two places at once, right? Like how great it would be. But Krishna is so powerful. He can be in all places at once. Yet he is never divided. So this is a very important principle because Krishna always remains the complete whole. Right? When anything material, if I have an apple and I cut it in two pieces, it's divided now. And I cut it into four, it's divided. Right? The four individual slices of apple are not each in themselves complete, nor are they whole. But Krishna, he can divide himself unlimitedly, yet each division remains complete and whole. There's no division. This is the unlimited nature of the Supersoul. So, Prabhupada gives quotes from Shastra, an example of how we can understand how the Supersoul can be present everywhere, yet undivided. How can we understand it? What example does he give here?
The sun.
The sun, and what is it?
Like when the sun is out and shining, it's like you can see the sun in everyone, like on everyone's head, shining on his head, but or like you feel like the sun is like above your head, but like you could be halfway around, you know, like in all different places, miles and miles and hundreds of miles apart, and you'll still say that, but it's the sun is only in one place.
Yeah. So the sun is one, but its presence is felt by many. Right? So Paramatma, actually, the Supersoul, it's a reflective expansion. So Krishna doesn't actually divide himself, it's a reflective expansion. Just as if you have 10 pots of water and the moon is out, you'll see the moon in each of the 10 pots. It being reflected in them, right? So similarly, Paramatma is sitting in everyone's heart as a reflective expansion of Shirarakshay Vishnu. So the principal point here is two. One, Krishna is everywhere. He is all pervading. And Krishna has said this in a few different ways in the prior verses. And two, though he is present everywhere, he remains undivided and present in the spiritual world. Just in the prior verse, he said, although he is far away, he is also near to all. And this is the wonderful nature of the Lord, is that he has taken residence in all of our hearts. And why has he taken residence in all of our hearts?
To guide us, to take us back to the different.
So he's always there to guide us on the path of how to find happiness and perfection. Yeah. Any other reasons why he's sitting in our heart?
Maintain us.
Huh?
Maintain us.
He is the maintainer, to maintain us. He is observing all of our desires. He's listening to each and every one of our desires. And, based on our qualification, is sanctioning them. Even if the desires don't agree with his desire. Normally, somebody asks us something. If we agree with it, then we'll do it. Right? Then we'll do it. But Krishna, even if he doesn't think it's best for us, he'll still sanction it. If we're qualified. So this is the love in relationship. Though the jiva is subordinate to the super soul, there's a very sweet relationship that exists. And principally, Krishna has taken residence in everyone's heart out of hope that someday we will look to him and ask for direction of how to find our way back to our eternal position where we can find bliss and happiness. Right? So Krishna's the maintainer. Right? How is the super soul maintaining?
He provides everything for all living entities.
He provides everything for all living entities, right? So being the super soul, he knows what each and every living entity needs. And thus is providing. But he is not only the maintainer, what else does he do?
Annihilate.
He's also the destroyer. Because everything in this material world ultimately comes to an what? End. Right? There's a beginning and an end. That is the nature of the material world. So as super soul, Krishna is in charge of not only maintaining, but also the destruction. And what else is he in charge of? Develops. He's the creator. So he's the creator, the maintainer, and the destroyer. It means he is everything. And the only logical conclusion from this, we have no independent existence separate from Krishna. He is creating the environment, the Prakriti, through his inferior energy. He is maintaining all the jivas in their desires to try to, as Prabhupada says, lord it over the material nature. And ultimately, he brings that cycle to an end, and then it comes back again. So when we think of maintainer, creator, and destroyer, we normally think of who?
Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma.
Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu. Right? But we see they are the empowered or secondary creators and destroyers. Krishna is saying that the super soul is this maintainer. So we should always remember the position of the super soul. Right? And this cycle of creation, maintenance, and destruction is going on eternally. So long as a living entity wants to be in the material world, that cycle will continue. And so in the coming verses, starting from verse 20, we'll explain why the living entity has come in contact with material nature, and why it has acquired a body, a shikra, and why it is transmigrating from body to body. So that the preview of that is because of its desire to be the enjoyer. So let's read the 18th verse.
He is the source of light in all luminous objects. He is beyond the darkness of matter and is unmanifested. He is knowledge. He is the object of knowledge, and he is the goal of knowledge. He is situated in everyone's heart.
So here is a summary of all this, right? So this is the last verse that Krishna is speaking about, the super soul in this section. Right? So he has spoken 6 verses about the super soul as the Kshetragya. Remember, the knower of the field. 2 knowers. So here is saying he is the source of all luminous objects. So all light ultimately comes from Krishna. Right? In the spiritual world, there is no sun or moon. Where is the light coming from? So he is the source of all light. And where does the sun get its light from? From Krishna. From Krishna. Remember, the sun, the universe, it's like a coconut. If you think of coconut, is inside a coconut, is there any light? No outside light can penetrate the thick covering. So the Brahma Jyoti is shining bright in the spiritual realm. But due to the very thick covering in the material world, it doesn't penetrate. Thus, within each universe, there is a sun, a source of light. There is a single sun in every universe, according to our Vedic astrology. And thus, that is the source, and Krishna is the source of that. Right? So he is beyond darkness of matter and is unmanifested. Right? So the super soul is part of knowledge. He's what's to be known. Because until you know the super soul, we don't have real knowledge. All other knowledge before we come to the platform of super soul is simply how to eat nicely, sleep nicely, mate nicely, and defend nicely. How to enjoy this kshetra. How to try to experience some happiness from this field of activities. But the jiva, the knower of this field, cannot find its happiness until it knows super soul. So the super soul is the object of knowledge. And what is the goal of all knowledge? Why do we acquire knowledge? To find some happiness, right? We study in school to learn some subject matters. Why? So that ultimately we can grow up, we can manipulate matter in some way to generate some income. And what is our goal for generating income? To find happiness. So similarly, so our whole life we spend almost acquiring knowledge to find some happiness. Well, knowledge of the super soul is what actually will give this desired goal, happiness. And so that's why Krishna is saying he is the goal of all knowledge. Right? So now we'll read just the final verse of this section. It's the last verse today. So someone else will read this verse?
The super soul, the supreme purpose. The super soul, the supreme personality.
So you can read the next verse. 19. Yes.
Translation. Thus the field of activities, the body, knowledge and the knower have been summarily described by me. Only my devotees can understand this thoroughly and thus attain to my nature.
Okay. Let's read the first paragraph, please.
The Lord has described in summary the body, knowledge and knowable. This knowledge is of 3 things: the knower, knowable, and the process of knowing. Combined, these are called Vigyan, or the science of knowledge. Perfect knowledge can be understood by the unalloyed devotees of the Lord directly. Others are unable to understand. The monists say that at the ultimate state, these 3 items become one, but the devotees do not accept this. Knowledge and development of knowledge mean understanding oneself in Krishna consciousness. We are being led by material consciousness, but as soon as we transfer all consciousness to Krishna's activities and realize that Krishna is everything, then we attain real knowledge. In other words, knowledge is nothing but the preliminary stage of understanding devotional service perfectly. In the 15th chapter, this will be very clearly explained.
Okay. So what is knowledge? How can you summarize knowledge? Well, that says it very nicely at the end of that paragraph.
The preliminary any stage of understanding devotional service perfectly.
That's it. Knowledge means knows who am I? Who is Krishna? What is my relationship? That is knowledge. There's nothing else besides that actually. All else is ignorance. Because it's ignorant of our eternal fact that I am part and parcel of Krishna. So this is knowledge. And knowledge consists of three things. What are the three things that knowledge consists of in this purpose? The knower. Who are the knowers? Jiva and Super Soul. Two knowers, okay? And then? Knowable. What are the two nobles, the objects of knowledge, the Gayam? Same. Soul and Super Soul. They're both objects of knowledge. And then the process of knowing, right? Remember verses 8 through 12? The process to know, right? So this combines to form Vigyan. Vigyan means realized knowledge. So this knowledge that I am not this body, I am not this Kshetra, I am separate from this Kshetra. That is knowledge that we have heard since our first Bhagavad Gita class we've ever attended. Every class we had. But is it Vigyan? Vigyan means? Realized knowledge, meaning I'm acting in that knowledge. Right? So, what is the only way to understand this thoroughly? Krishna uses the word thoroughly. Means completely. Means to actually realize this knowledge. So how can we understand and actually realize that I am not this body, I am spirit soul? What is the only means? Devotional service. So bhakti is the only way to realize this knowledge about the soul and the super soul, this nature, the enjoyer, this body, and the object of knowledge. Right? Sometimes these things feel so technical and so detailed. So what process should we undertake to actually understand this? What process? Devotional service. And specifically? Bhakti. What specific activity is the most powerful?
Unalloyed chanting. Consistent.
Unalloyed chanting. Yes, let's combine the two. Pure chanting. Simply by chanting the holy names of the Lord, this knowledge will become revealed. How do we know? Because who's sitting in our heart?
Krishna.
So when Krishna sees the devotee sincerely practicing devotional service, then of course Krishna will reveal this knowledge. When did he tell us that he will give this knowledge and destroy ignorance? What chapter? You remember?
Chapter 2.
Chapter
2.
2, yeah, he said in chapter 2. More recently he said in chapter 10. Right? Dadami buddhi yogam tam. I give the knowledge to my unalloyed devotees. I destroy their ignorance with the light of knowledge. So, it is only through devotional service, our own speculation, our own analysis, our own trying to figure this out will lead one astray. Just as the monists think that this is all one. The jiva and super think that the jiva in its conditioned state is separate. But as soon as it purifies, liberates, it becomes one with the Supreme. No. There are eternally two separate knowers. Never one. But this detail can only be understood in completeness by unalloyed devotional service. So as we study this chapter, and particularly this last section, remember, ultimately Krishna is going to say, Manmana bhava bhakto maji mam namaskuru, that you just become my devotee. I'll take care of everything. Arjuna, you're my dear friend. So, this is the important understanding. And what happens when we understand this knowledge with bhakti? What is the result? Krishna says at the end of this verse, there's a very nice result.
You can go back to Krishna.
One attains the supreme destination. Means one finds ultimate bliss and happiness. So no other knowledge will give this result. All other knowledge will give some temporary result. But this knowledge gives the perfect answer. Right? So what is the best way to come to the process of devotional service? Chanting. But how do you know about chanting? Association. With, ultimately?
Pure devotees.
By the mercy of the pure devotee, by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, he is presenting this knowledge to us. And we see in so many of his purports, Prabhupada says, one must submissively approach the Guru and accept this knowledge. Right? So this knowledge is descending, meaning it's not something we can go out and acquire on our own. It must be revealed to us by someone who has seen the truth. So this is revealed knowledge. So let us not become frustrated in our own attempts to try to simply surrender to the spiritual master and follow those instructions, which are simply to be constantly engaged in devotional service. And thus all of this will be revealed. Very simply. Okay? Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Antakoti Vaishnavinda. Any questions, comments, discussion? Everyone's all set today?
Taking in everything.
Okay. So with that, next week we'll continue with verse 20 and begin discussing how the jiva became connected to this body, this kshetra, by its misunderstanding of one simple concept. Who is the enjoyer? Who is the Purusha? Simply by misunderstanding who is the Purusha, we have come in contact with this body. So we'll begin discussing that section next week. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.